Cool. Thank you for doing this, first of all. Uh,
Yeah,
and congrats. Also, fun to kind of do it on the day it comes out. So
I know.
most
Yeah.
and least pressure in a way. You're like, I can't do anything about it, but also, are people going? Like, what's going on? Did someone rent
Yep.
it? No,
Yeah. I'm like, here it goes. It's out in the world.
exactly. It's funny. I had wanted to see it, but managed not to for a surprisingly long time because, you know, Toronto's a weird place. So
Hmm.
sometimes you want to sleep, and happens. Not a lot, but it happens. And I love almost everything Mark does, so I knew of it. I'd interviewed him a couple years ago, and he was great. I actually moderated Q&As with him 2 years ago while I was in Toronto.
Oh,
For
really?
He was in, I want to say Texas. It was for language lessons. I was in Toronto.
Okay.
Uh,
Hmm.
Natalie might have been in like LA, and it was beamed into New York. And it was,
Yep.
no one is here for the thing we're doing. All right, cool.
So weird.
Yeah, that was the weirdest thing about 2020. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
I couldn't help it. But once I finally saw it, I went in pretty much going, all right, two actors I like. And pretty early on, I went, oh. And I did that every like 10 or 15 minutes for about an hour. Uh,
All right.
so I love it. But when you first sit down and kind of have this idea, how do you know it's a movie? Because it could easily be like, I got this idea, but it's just one of the 20 ideas that goes in a drawer.
Totally. Yeah. Which, being a collaborator of Mark Duplass's for like 10 plus years, we have a huge drawer full, overfilling of ideas. Uh, and Mark pitches a lot of ideas to me that are like these half-formed ideas, and I'll throw them in the drawer. And there was something about he had pitched something that was like loosely like last two guys on Earth living in a biosphere and a few other tidbits. And I was like, something about this one is different. And I feel like there's space for me to do some really cool things and explore some themes. Like this is just a great space for that.
Yeah.
So I held on to it and was like, dude, can I take this and make this my feature directorial debut? And he was like, let's do it.
Oh,
But
no,
it was, yeah, no, it was like science fiction. It was the fact that the last men on Earth are men. I
yeah.
was like, oh, there's so much to unpack there.
And like you said, I think you found the perfect dude to be like, yeah, no, go play with this. Like this was the only thing I gave you is like this one sentence. Like, all right, you have an idea.
Yeah.
Great. And I think so much of it is very specific but universal. Like every time there's a detail that comes into play in the movie, it's not hammered home in any way. Like you can almost miss it the first time. And like I remember and watching it took me a couple times to realize, oh wait, he was the president. That's not just like a joke they're making because they're teasing each other. Most of the first act is just riffing with each other. And then you go,
Yeah.
oh no, there's a little bit of darkness in that joke that it keeps getting
Yeah.
made. All right. And it so informs the rest of the movie.
Yeah. No, I'm big on like breadcrumbs. Like there's a lot of things that are like very quietly seated early in the film that you can almost miss. They'll come back later. And I also am like a big fan of like making sure the film holds up in repeat viewings. And so, yeah, I think there are things that get missed, and I think it's okay. It's all like part of the tonal makeup of it.
I also think in a weird way, missing something is not a bad thing because
Hmm.
like movies, more often than not, you started watching movies early. You probably watched things a little above your mental capacity at the time, but they spoke to you, and like that's awesome. You know, I watched Magnolia at like 13. I'm sure I didn't get it, but something about it,
Yeah.
I love this. And going back over the years, we don't need to know how many years it's been since I was 13. Um, you get more and you get more. And I think someone could watch this movie and totally miss most of it and still go, I had a great time. Or,
Yeah.
and the same person who got every single bit and is like, there's so much I want to talk about, but I can't because you haven't seen it kind of thing. They have the same enjoyment level. And that's pretty rare, especially it's two actors. It's fairly low budget. Like everything is just ideas and dialogue.
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, it wouldn't be what it is without Mark and Sterling, because they pushed it beyond that tiny little dome in such a great way. And also my cinematographer Nate and my production designer Megan. I mean, everybody made that world feel bigger.
Yeah, what you show and what you don't show is
Mm-hmm.
it's all obviously very conscientious, but it also never feels like, well, we don't have the money. It always feels like, well, I want you to see this, so this is what I'm showing you, as opposed to, well,
Yeah.
I can't turn the camera backwards. You wouldn't like what you see. Like it never
Yeah.
feels, and that's especially for a first film, it really, you never get that vibe of, oh, they're figuring it out as they go along. Everything is very fully formed.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely was. I mean, I had a long time to prepare for making my first feature. It was like 30 years in the making. But also like I've produced films for like 10, 15 years. And I know a lot of the tricks. I know a bunch of the things that don't work. I know how to be super time sensitive and efficient and just make things feel bigger than they are.
Well, I mean, I think one, having that experience with Mark, and also, sort of learning, watching like Lynn Shelton make movies, like they're in broad strokes, I thought of Hump Day watching this, just because it is so much about like male relationships, but we're gonna tie it into something else that if I didn't tell you what it's
Mhm.
about and you find out, you go, wait, what? But you don't have to care about that. It's still about these two people, and
Yeah.
that's what you're thinking about when the movie ends, as opposed to what the conversation piece might be of it all. And that's what I
Yeah.
love about that movie, and it's very much here too.
Yeah, I hope so. It's funny, I didn't even think about the Hump Day parallel until like I was on set one day and I was like looking at Mark and Sterling and I just had this flash to Mark and Josh
Yeah.
in Hump Day. It's like, oh, that's so wild. That it's like 10 however many years and now we're back there still analyzing male relationships with Mark.
Yeah. Hey, listen, if you do something well,
Yeah.
don't do it for free, one, and two, keep doing it. But no, I mean, obviously, Mark was probably going to be in it once, it came to fruition. But I imagine figuring out who's going to be opposite him it's not going to make or break the movie necessarily, but it is sort of the biggest first choice you make when you're making this.
Hmm.
It's like,
Yeah. No, I totally think it could make or break the movie. I mean, I can't even imagine this movie without Sterling. It's when we were writing it, I write with actors in mind, even though I know they're likely never going to play that role, just so that they are a formed character in my brain. And I'd written, especially the dialogue, which is something I drilled down on with Mark and Sterling in mind. Like Sterling from the start was like, oh, who would be our dream? Sterling. And wrote it with him in mind the whole time. So I never imagined him to actually play the role. But he was it from day one.
well, I mean, it's such a genius bit of casting, because you go, one guy was the president, and one guy is the behind the scenes dude, and one of these two is essentially the end of the world equivalent of a stoner, and one's this super intense, got everything figured out. And guess which one was like everything about it is so well done and so thought out. And then they both just lean into these roles, because
Hmm.
I don't know when else you would ever have them opposite each other, because they tend to have
Yeah.
such a different vibe. And that's what I think the movie does so well, is that you take two actors who work in very different ways and they
Hmm.
feed off each other in a way that honestly, I don't know who else would have thought of it.
Yeah, they definitely don't like run in the same circles or, like he's never we'd never crossed paths with him. I think Mark ran into him at the back of like the Emmys award ceremony or something, but he was in my brain ever since I saw the indie film Wave
Oh my
and
God.
just
Love that movie.
like he's so good in that. And I was like, if anybody can do drama that well, they're usually pretty amazing at comedy too. So without really knowing if he could do it, I just assumed.
Oh, between that and when they did that live West Wing thing where he had to take
Oh,
the role, you're like, oh no, he can do everything. All right. Why is he?
yeah. And yeah, OJ too. That was the other one where I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, this guy.
I'm sure you're going that, you're like, oh no, I thought of more things he's great on. That just means he's less likely to be in my movie. Shit, never mind.
Yeah, exactly. No, he was so game. He was like our biggest fan of the script from the moment. I mean, he read it overnight, which doesn't happen.
I mean, I imagine I don't know what page the first time that you go, wait, what happens? But if you don't finish it that same reading, like, how can you think of anything else? Like, I can't imagine.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
I'll come back to figure out what happens to these two guys in a little bit. Like, I'm gonna go make some food. No, you're like, keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie has that effect too, because if you lay out like what actually happens, like if someone had to tell you the plot of the movie, it is a fairly compact and not a ton of individual like events happen. But
Mhm.
that's the forward momentum there is somehow like you're sweating almost watching it. Like, what next? Even though the what next is like, well, it's baby steps, really.
Yep. Yeah.
It's so well done and so like fun while still being like it could easily be depressing. Like it's just a hair away from like you want to cry over what's happening, but most of it is like, no, it's actually like darkly funny. And the fact that they retain a sense of humor, especially in some of the like darker moments when one of them will make a comment. I was like that's what you're thinking of now. It is very
Totally.
this is what these two guys would be. It's very well real.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, I think like comedy is the best way into anything. And if we could just laugh through every experience, I think it'd be better and healthier. So it was, yeah, that was always important to me. Is I'm like, you can keep people in almost anything if you're making them laugh.
Is there a moment when you're making it when you feel like, okay, I think I got the hang of this? Because I'm sure until you do it, it's all theoretical. No matter how many
Mm,
first or 100,
mhm.
this could be the worst thing ever made. It could be the best thing ever made. We don't know until we start. Like obviously the first day, I need nothing to fall apart. But like, is there a moment in the middle where you start to go, I got this. Like I think this is gonna work out, and like I think what we're gonna do is gonna like people will like this, or is it like after
Yeah.
show it to people?
I mean, there was not a lot of time to think because we shot it in like 15 days. Which, and I have produced enough to know like the only way you can do that is to just trust your instincts, keep moving, feel confident, even if you're not,
Yep.
and just go. And so, we just kind of went for it. I believed in it the whole time, just what we were trying to do, and everybody else did. So it was just this kind of continual push forward. But I think the moment where I was like, okay, I also feel good is when I got the first, because what I was doing is having an assistant editor lay everything in and all my circle takes as we went along. So every Friday I would get a rough cut of what we shot that week. And so the first time I got that, I was like, oh, cool, got it. Like this is a movie.
Well, my joke that I always make to a producer when they direct for the first time is the first time you had to go and ask for more time or money, did you have to stop yourself and be like, well, I would have told myself no. Like, wait, now I deserve it just because I changed my job. It is because there's no such thing. There's no such thing as enough money or enough time. You could have made this movie for 6 years if someone would have paid you.
Yeah. Although in this case, it was weird because it was like me producing and directing, which I don't know if I'd recommend in the way that I did it on this one. But it was sort of like an internal, like there was the director and me and the producer being like, this is what I want, but is that really smart? And it was a lot of that was happening inside my own head.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the results speak for itself is what I will leave you with there. So please continue to direct with or without Mark. I think the more we see of Mark in things, it's always just amazing because he's like, I don't know how anyone doesn't like him is the thing. Like it because it's
Yeah, he's very likable, even
yeah.
when he's playing like a serial killer.
Well, yeah, that made that one such a weird one to watch because you're like, he's still kind of adorable even while he's butchering someone. Like I don't know. So that kind of like
Yeah.
thing that can't be taught, like especially when life sucks, you want that guy in more movies. So especially like a thinker like this, I'm such a fan of this movie.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So you get to relax a little bit now because there's not a whole lot more to do about it. It's you birthed it. It's here.
Yes. Yes. It's out of my control at this point.
Exactly. I mean, you could buy a bunch of tickets, but like that's kind of not helping. There's the producer in you is like, no, don't do that.
I
Uh,
know. Yeah.
but I can't wait for what comes next. I'm very eager for the next one.
I'm eager to. Yeah. Once you get like the taste, you don't want to stop.
Yeah, you're just like movies. Let's do it.
Yep.
Thank you. Congrats again. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.